Hey everybody, and welcome to Coalition Revisited number 9, I believe. I think it should be number 9. I think number 8 last time was Commonwealth. Anyways, I've said it, I think episode 7 already, that I wanted to do one of the, I wanted to do Baltic or Israel, I think, or maybe just Baltic. Anyways, here's Baltic. I played a good amount recently, not really that it's really too hard, you know, what you're supposed to do with Baltic, but I feel like I'm just gonna go over it anyways, since some people are interested, obviously. So, logistics. First of all, fun fact: this is Mad Mad, in case you didn't know, or like very similar to what Mad Mad looks like. And one small thing about the T55 CV, it has bad optics, which is the worst optics you can have. Other than maybe the I think the FOB is the only unit or one of the few units that has even worse optics. Yeah, most or basically all CVs have medium optics, obviously, except for helicopter CVs with very good. So this is probably just some sort of weird inconsistency that Eugene fucked up. Not that I recommend the T55 CVs. Anyways, I'd always go for a T72 CV because the T55 is only one top armor, which is pretty bad. But I figured it's worth noting if you're one of the people who likes to use these very cheap tank CVs even with one top armor, definitely use the polished one instead. Other than that, if you're using infantry CV, you probably want the polished one for the MI17. Other than that, you know, you have the gas, which is a bit faster off-road, but only has 320 kilometers autonomy. In 90, I'd say like 95 to 98% of the cases, that is a non-issue, but very, very rarely it can actually run out of fuel. If you have to retreat your CV and reposition it or something, yeah, I just thought it's worth noting. Other than that, nothing really too noteworthy here. Alright, infantry tab. So this is actually probably one of the most comfortable infantry tabs that I can think of, at least for my personal playstyle. So I feel like there's 3 effectively must-have units. First of all, there's obviously the Spike, the PSTOHJ94, yeah, Spike MR. Must have, basically, it's so good. You get good availability. Don't forget that Baltic Front gets a 10% availability bonus for some reason. But let's not get too upset here. Obviously, very, very good. Very fast ATGM, good availability, and not really expensive either. Not that like the difference between 20 or 25 points is really noticeable, but yeah, you get 7 of those downweighted, which is very good. Definitely, in my opinion, definitely take them in a wheeled transport. Whether you're gonna take the XA180, KT, Musti, or KRKK doesn't really matter, or like nothing is really a bad choice here. KT you probably can't fit in, or at least I can, because you only get 2 of those, and I personally use them on other units. I like the KRKK. Some others like the Musti with 16 AP can one-shot 2 armor, so nearly every wheeled transport, or maybe even every wheeled transport. I'm not sure if there's a wheeled transport with more than 2 front armor. The XA186NO used to have 3 armor. I think it got nerfed to 2 back in the day. I'm not sure if there's a wheeled transport with 3 armor, but the AIM-X10 does have 3 front armor, and the tank version of the AIM-X10 has 4 front armor. Which is probably the most dangerous thing. But with the range on the Musti, where is it? With the range on the Musti only 1400, you're probably gonna die anyways. But also a decent choice. Just be aware that it has only 5% stabilizer, so use attack move, or just the XA if you wanna, the basic XA if you wanna save the points. Unless you're playing mech, of course, I would definitely stick to the wheeled transports, because getting them in strong positions, especially early on, is very crucial. The other must-have unit is the Panzerjäger 90. You could obviously also take these, but for 10 points, the only thing you get is a slightly better MG and a slightly better primary. Primary isn't really out of the ordinary. MG is not out of the ordinary. You sacrifice availability and you pay 10 points more. It's not really you're not gonna like screw up your deck or anything if you take these. The thing is, the Panzeri, with being cheaper and more available, they're just also more forgiving and more flexible. But like I said, it's not a huge deal, but you at the very least you want either of those, because this is without a doubt the best anti-tank weapon you can get. Obviously, you also get them on the Erikois and the Recon tab, but just having them in the Infantry tab with the high availability is basically necessary. Like I said, I strongly suggest the Panzer Yakari, unless you're playing motorized and don't have access to them. Whether you're a good, bad, or medium player, I'd always go for the Panzeri. Also, it's German for except, except for very, very niche scenarios, maybe where you're gonna have to do a lot of town fighting or something. But like I said, generally speaking, take the Panzer Yakari. Personally, again, I take them in a wheel transport. These I basically always take in a KT. I think you get like 13 or something of them. That's good. Then you have plenty of KTs available as well. And them being wheeled means that, should you need the high anti-tank weapon quickly, you have it in a wheel transport. BTR 50 is also a good choice, if you want them cheap. BMP1 if you want them cheap, but also in a transport that can do something, or BMP2 if you want them in a transport that can also take a few hits maybe and actually stand up to proper autocannon vehicles outside of a Marder 2 maybe. Basically every transport here is fine except for the PB, unless there's really no actual reason to take the PB over the KT. And if you don't have any KTs left, just take the basic XA. Don't bother with the BTR 60. But every transport is fine. I'd suggest using the KT. Again, it's in the end it's up to you, but one card of those is very, very nice to have. The other must-have unit are Yakari 90 and the BTR 50 specifically. At least one card. I even run 3. At least one card of these, probably 2, but that depends on what else you take. At least one card of these, they're just so good. They're good. Soaking as in like meat shield infantry, because of their price and because the transport has 2 front armor. And they are also good grinding infantry because they're very good MG. And especially for forest fights, for 10 points, they get the best anti-tank weapon that you can get without having to pay extra 5 points, of course. And they have an assault rifle, which is good, As in, they don't have an SMG, which is horrible on line infantry. So there's really nothing better that you could get. It's really deep, I think. Probably the most versatile line infantry that I can think of. I think the other thing that would come very close are the Sojong-Su 85. Where are they? Sojong-Su 85. Very similar, they have a worse MG. However, they do get a better 5-pointer because it has 2 MGs and it's a bit faster. And they also get the KFV, which is a very strong, but also very strong combination. Yakari themselves are stronger, whereas the Sojong-Su have a better 5-pointer and also the cheap KFV, I guess there's a tie between those two, but the Yakari 90, when you look at, like Razzmann and the M113 is kind of similar, but the difference is the Yakari themselves are just very strong and efficient as well. They don't really rely on fire support like Razzmann often do, or Chasseur, or even Sojong-Su. They can fight for themselves very effectively, unless it's a CQC fight in a town, but that goes for every line infantry that isn't Diggers 90 or something that actually for some reason have a CQC MG, but they're just so good. And I take at the very least one card of these. Don't be Firestarter and take the base ones just because you get 4 more of them per card. That's not worth it. Always take Yakari 90. So that's like 3 cards that in my opinion are basically must have. Then it's really up to you. Some people I like I said, I would suggest using 2 cards of these. Because, like I said, they double as grinding infantry, as in like actual anti-infantry as well as meat shields. So you're gonna use a lot, or should ideally use a lot of them. That's why 2 cards, even downweighted 2 cards, is not really excessive. You're gonna run out of them very quickly if you only take like 1 card on upweighted or something. That's like these 4 cards are plenty. That's really all you need. you know, except for the Erikois and the recon there, but that's really technically all you need. Like I said, I run 3 cards of the Yakari 9 in the BTR 50, and the only reason I do so is because I don't know what else to put into the 5th slot. You know, I probably should put in something else, but it's like, you know, I can quickly show you my deck if I can find it. Yeah, 3 cards of the Yakari 9 in the BTR 50. This is all I need for a whole game. You know, I could maybe, you know, depending on how the game goes, probably only 1 card down with it, but that's really all you need. You have your enter tank infantry, you have your ATGM infantry, you have your grind and meat shield infantry, and you have a KT, you know, to deal with like fire support and be fire support, you know, shit like that. That's all you need. So yeah. Then, you know, what you could also do is obviously take the Akari 90 or one of the cards, you know, or the 3rd card in the KT for cheap KT with okay infantry. What you can also do is what Nande does in his deck is he takes the Spadoch. Oh god, Spadoch Roniarze or something like that in the Scots too. They're literally Mutchison clones, you know, except for the transports, and compared to Mutchison, their wheel transport, or this wheel transport, only costs 10 points. So that is very, very good town fighting infantry, purely for town fighting, really. Or I mean, obviously they're also okay for forest fighting, but especially good for town fighting because it's cheap shock infantry. And for town fighting, especially if it's like a big and deep town, you don't really need fire support very much, at least direct fire support. So you probably want your shock infantry as cheap as possible. And Scots 2, while obviously being 10 points rather than 5 points compared to Mordschützen, it's not too expensive, but it offers you the speed. And for openers, when getting into towns, it's also very, very crucial. So that's what you can do. Or you can take them in the MI17 if you want an MI17, you know, for direct fire support. Or the 90s if you, for some reason, also want the heavy AT, which I'd probably suggest using the base ones. Or maybe even these. They're not great, but they can get the job done, and they are in the MS17. If you just want something on the flank in a single building that can kind of is rather self-sufficient, you know, that's what you could do. Or some people like to use these in the Musti or the KRKK or in the BMP1 even. There's also a fine choice. Or what you can also do is take these in the KT. To have a 20-point KT, you know, you don't care what infantry that is, but you get a KT for 20 points, which is a good deal. Or you can take a second out of Panzer Yakari 90 in a different transport, or even the base Panzer in like the BMP1 to have like a cheap-ish shock squad for forests. It can also kind of deal with vehicles. There's a lot of choices you have, but as long as you have at least the 3 core cards, there's not a whole lot you can do wrong. Obviously, like taking these in the MIP or something is obviously bullshit and useless. But I think you get the point. And what I probably should do is replace one of these Yakari 90 with something like an MI17. Or some people even like these. I'm personally not a huge fan of them. They do have, for some reason, a significantly higher rate of fire on their SMG than normal shock squads. But for town fighting, they're also okay. But like I said, I don't like them myself, because they also have a very basic MG. The infantry tab is... It's not like... Let's say Eurocorps. Like, Eurocorps obviously has very strong choices. Legion 9 and VAP T20, Panzergrenz in the Marder 2, Milan 3. That's basically... At least Legion 9 and the Milan 3 I kind of must have. Marder 2 kind of is. Some people don't like them. And you also have Rima 85 in the Panther. But I feel like they're often rather niche, so you need a lot of different infantry cards. You kind of need Chasseur 85 as well for a cheap anti-tank and kind of spam and meat shield infantry, but they're not very efficient. Base Chasseur kind of do the job, but they're very, very bad against vehicles, you know, even 5-pointers. Reservists are very good reservists, obviously, but they're purely meat shield and nothing else. But here you have Yakari 90, you have the spam infantry, you have the good enough AT for forest infantry, and you have the grinding and meat shield, you know, all in one. So all else you need is the ATGM squad, and then you also have the heavy anti-tank squad and wheeled infantry, which you want at least one card of in one, as well as like good enough fire support, you know, that can deal with like IFVs and shit. So that's like, it's so just comfortable, I guess, is one way to put it. You know, it's you don't really have to worry a whole lot about your infantry tab. I think enough about that. Okay, support. Obviously, there's. I feel like some things I don't need to get over. If Igla, they're perfectly fine man pads, but you have the Erikois, so you don't need them. Commandos are basically overrated. I don't think I need to get over most of this. There's no resist to take them since you have Yakari 90, etc., etc. In a mech deck, Grom in the Promet is a nice thing. In a normal deck is obviously fine as well. Like I said, you can get away with only 3 or 4 cards and put whatever into your fifth card. So you could also put these in, but like I said, not really necessary since you have Erikois. But very nice combination that squad. So yeah, support them. This is. I'm just gonna. There's no point in using these 3. OSA, AK, AKM, both perfectly fine. I've talked about these plenty enough that yeah, similar to Eastern Bloc, they have very, very nice synergy with the Erikois with the 4 HE manpads, ROMs with the 7 HE missiles, or OSAs with the 7 HE missiles. Together that's 11 HE, together that's a killed plane. So every 6 and 7 or 6 HE, 6 plus HE AA synergies very well with your Erikois. They're basically all not great. This is like the East German RM70, but you have the Eurogun in the stack, as you'll see, in case you didn't know, so not really necessary. Not really necessary either, since you have Erikois, preferably in a wheel transport if you want to wield AA. This is fine and self-sufficient. Also, with Erikois, you don't really need as much AA. I haven't really ever used them properly. They might not be too bad. I honestly don't know. This is not particularly good. Only 2 missiles, only 45% accuracy. It's only 55 points though, so it's not really too bad. But then if you compare it to something like the HQ61A, for 5 points more, you get 15% more accuracy. Sure, you lose range, but I think the 15% more accuracy is so much more useful. And you get the Book M1, which is a Book M1. It's fine. I'm not a fan of them in team 1 versus 1 team games. If you want that kind of heavy AA, it's a perfectly fine choice. Keep in mind, it has to reload for 10 seconds after shooting 2 missiles, as you can see here. Other than that, it's fine. Again, kind of unnecessary. Your Crotal on steroids, kind of expensive, but it is also just very good. 6 HE means, again, together with Erikois, can kill planes, very strong combination. Again, very good range versus helicopters, and has more range versus planes compared to the normal Crotal. Also has more accuracy, as you see. So very strong unit. It is 85 points though, so keep that in mind. While very good, in a 1 versus 1, I'm not sure if I would start with one of these. It probably depends on the maps, because again, against planes, it's not. For 85 points, obviously it has no radar as well, which is very, very good, and obviously the range versus helos. But for 85 points, I'd personally at least open the game probably with an OSA instead, since I have Erikois most likely basically near the front line, which are very close to helicopters, so I probably don't need a range against helicopters that early on. Then again, you could also take this and get in the MiG-29 early on versus planes, so it also map dependent. Sorry for that fucking voice crack. It's also map dependent, opponent dependent, opponent stack dependent, etc., etc. Very underrated unit. Nanda loves spamming these. For 25 points, ridiculous range versus helicopters. 5 front armor also means that against IVs and infantry, it can do a lot of damage. And keep in mind, 228 suppression, that's a lot of suppression versus ground units. Don't underestimate this little piece of shit. That's all I have to say. Marksman, it's a marksman. It's probably the best marksman, I'd say. Maybe not the. Yeah, I'd say it's the best, because for 1, it has more fucking accuracy, and 2, it's not as slow as the other marksman. The Challenger marksman is faster, and obviously has more. They both have more front armor. There's obviously also the Centurion for 50 points. Hang on, let me just. Also this one, but it's just fucking slow as shit. But I think is only 5 kmh faster. The front armor makes this marksman very good for fire support, of course, as long as the infantry doesn't have the best anti-tank weaponry. But I think the extra, especially the 10% extra accuracy and stabilizer, I think that's definitely more noticeable than the tad bit of speed and and good amount of front armor is. And when it comes to the chieftain, yeah, I think the Finnish marksman is probably the best one, but it's also not really necessary. In a mech deck, it's different, or armored, different thing. But no, this is literally a stat copy of the Mister, the gun that is, which is all that matters, while at the same time having 3 per card availability and being available in mechanized. Again, 10 seconds aim time, similar to fire. For 110 points, the availability in mechanized, it's very good. Again, outside of playing mech, probably not really necessary, since you can just get a Jurgen, which is a Jurgen. Which maybe outside the Buratino, which is not really, which is a trade-off, and I wouldn't say one is definitely better than the other. It's always depending on the situation, the deck, the map, what you're playing against, etc., etc. But outside of that, probably the best rocket artillery in the game. Some people like to say that it has a somewhat longer total reload time than the LRM, and the LRM has a tad bit more suppression. But at the same time, you get 4 more missiles per salvo, and that is even more important, the time between the individual rockets is only 1 second. So the Jurgen shoots, like if you tell it to shoot somewhere, the first rocket comes out, and then after 1 second the next, and so on and so on. The LRM has 1 rocket out, then 2 seconds the next rocket, 2 seconds, etc., etc., which is a huge difference and makes evading the LRM a bit easier. And the extra maximum range is actually a bad thing, because it means also more minimum range, which on smaller maps can be very, very annoying, especially in 1 versus 1 scenarios. Which is, why I just think the Jurgen is just so much better and versatile. Never, if it's a bit cheaper than the book, while being also slower, you also have a wheeled version. Same thing with the book. If you like these, go for it. Personally, I don't find it very necessary with the OSA AKs, but Sergei mod. And I think the problem with these set as use is they have a very short burst length. So while the range and shit for 30 points is very nice now, they have to reload very quickly. They probably can't even kill 1 helicopter before having to reload again for a couple of seconds. Yeah. Honestly, I don't even know. I've never used this. There's no reason to. I think it has a 15 seconds aim time, or 20 seconds if I'm not wrong. It's very weird. I'm sorry. I still think the 5HE mortar is better. Usually what I say is the more HE on a mortar, the better. But I think 5HE is the maximum, because this has significantly less ammo and is significantly more supply intensive. If you have a fob, it's obviously not a huge deal. But I think the Telak 84 is just more useful. And especially if you're not running a fob, definitely take this one instead. Also, it's 20 points more as opposed to like 5 or 10, which is usually the next step. So, yeah. And if you're not running a fob, like I said, this is just more useful. I've started to dislike this. Again, I think in Baltic there's not really a need for this with air decoys around and stuff. It's not really a bad unit, but I've started to dislike this. Again, the ZTU-23 has the same issue, that it has to reload very quickly after only a few shots, and with the accuracy and not too great range. Again, and the Grom has to reload after 2 missiles as well. So it can happen fairly quickly that it can't even reliably kill a single Hind or something without having both Groms hitting. So that's why I started to dislike this. It is only 45 points though, and has very good availability, so keep that also in mind. But also only 1 front armor means it dies very quickly to rocket bots. Thanks. That if you want cheap fire support, this is your cheap fire support. You don't really need it as much since you have your caddy spam, but it's obviously still very, very good to have. Everything else is not really everything else like up to here is not really noticeable. The T-72S is fine, but I think either the PAVE or the M2 Wilk, or both even, depending on what you want your deck to look like are generally better choices. The missile is obviously nice to have. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like the Wilk and the Pave are just more useful. The Wilk just being in general, on average, I think just being more useful, and the Pave being more niche, of course. But I think both are better choices. This is trash. So what you probably want is you want the M1 Wilk and you want the mod, that's for sure. Both in team games and in 1 versus 1s, I'd say. Unless, if you're a player who doesn't like the very heavy tanks, you don't really need the mod, but no, it's just a super heavy. It's certainly not the best super heavy, it's probably the worst one, if I had to say. Let me put it this way. Against other super heavies, I'd probably prefer the mod over the Moderna, because of the 9 RPM and the better accuracy. On average, I think, if we, also look at other usefulness, etc., the Moderna, I'd say, definitely wins, not only also because it has a higher availability, mainly because it has a higher availability. I think if they had the same availability, both are being either 3 or 2, then I'd probably actually go for the mod because of the accuracy and rate of fire. But enough about that. 20. I think outside of a 1 versus team games, that 20 isn't really needed. And Wilk and Pave. Some people like to take both. The Pave is can obviously be very, like, 2 of those can really fuck up super heavies unless it's like at max range. So they require, however, a lot more micro, because something like Apilas 2 shots that, whereas at M2 Wilk would survive 2 shots, stuff like that. Against and on max range, super heavy can really a super heavy will 2-shot you. So they require a lot more micro than something like an M2 Wilk. Or 30 AP missiles from planes will 1-shot a Pave, whereas they would need to hit with both against an M2 Wilk. So if you're using the Pave, it's not most certainly not like a wrong choice over the M2 Wilk. Just be aware that you will most likely babysit them more than an M2 Wilk. Losing in a Pave is obviously not nearly as big of a deal as losing a mod, or but it's still 120 points, so you want to be careful. M1 Wilk obviously being a very, very solid medium tank, outside of the K1 and the M84A, probably the best one. I think with the K1 it's kind of a trade-off. You get the autoloader, you get the 4HE. K1 obviously being just more accurate, stuff like that. It's a trade-off. I think if I had to choose, it's probably actually I'd say I wanted to say I'd go for the Wilk, but maybe it also just depends on the rest of your deck. These 5 tanks are all very, very solid, and you want at least 3 of them. It's maybe just one way to put it. Some people like these. I'm not a fan of these kind of helicopters. It's not really a horrible choice. Both of these are fine. I prefer the KT because it can, especially for base defense or flank defense, it can also good and well enough deal with helicopters, especially if it's sitting with a bush and utilize the stealth. Keep in mind it only has 180 rounds, but it's enough most of the times. Also kind of dependent on who you play against. If you play against someone who does a lot of this sneaking around, you might actually start to run out of ammo sometimes. BP1, it's not really as much for like a flank defense, but more like flank offense. It's like let's say the open field between the 2-second spawns on highway, for example, is a good way to put it. It's not really as in like base defense for your base, flank defense for your base, more like flank defense for your front line is I guess a good way to put it, because it's not very consistent. However, keep in mind, Grom and Conquerors, even though it shouldn't be able to, can fire at the same time, which is very, very a very, very big deal. A lot of these I went over in the Eastern Bloc, so I'm not gonna go over here again. This is fine. This is also fine, but some of these units, like this one, you generally just can't fit them in. Air decoys must have. I'd say definitely take 2. Some people like to take 1, but I'd say definitely take 2. They're even also for your AA net, they're just kind of crucial. I like to take 1 card in the KT, 1 card in the Puma. Some people like to take 2 cards in the KT or in the 180 if you can't have any more KTs. Everything is really fine. I take definitely the Puma over the Mi-8P. The extra speed and the lower size means it's for one faster, but the lower size also means it can accelerate faster and land faster, which is more useful than the extra HP in my opinion. This is not really a bad unit. This is just it's a fun little unit, you know. If you have the space, sure, use it. It's not really horrible. Did it always have very good stealth? I want to see. Let me open the armory tool real quick. I want to see if it has the same stealth as infantry, or if it has like slightly worse stealth. Because if it actually has the same stealth, it's honestly not too bad. I always assumed it had only good stealth, not very good. So I'm not sure if they at some point buffed it, or if I just misremembered that it had like slightly worse stealth. So let's just take Sissy. Where's stealth? There we go. Okay, hang on a second so I can show it to you as well. So they have the same stealth 2.5. Just make sure. Let's take these. Yeah, okay. Actually surprising. I thought it had worse health, so maybe it's actually even better than I thought. Maybe I'll at some point give it a try. Obviously very good recon tech, especially if you're playing against like Dutch German or mixed blue 4. This is very good to deal dealing with this one, because even at max range you can two-shot the Leopard Volcanic. Just keep in mind you have a terrible stabilizer. But overall, in my opinion, better than the Leopard Volcanic. And yeah, even kind of an okay medium tanks substitute, although obviously not nearly as good in forests as something like a Wilk. Sissy, your shock recon infantry. You know, if you just want affordable recon infantry purely for the sake of scouting, because obviously that's 15 points less than Eriko's. So that will be your choice. Some people like to use the Salamandra. I don't. I've went over this in the Eastern Bloc video. Yeah, not a fan. It's not really a bad unit. If you use it, I'd strongly suggest using it in a deck where you use a fob. No need for the ASU since you have the Charioteer, or if you want the Stormy. Not a lot of people use it. Again, I think mainly simply because you have the Charioteer. But it's not by any means a bad unit. You have 3 front armor, you have a 8 RPM gun with okay range and sadly only 2 HE, but you have 3 front armor, you're 10 points and you have an MG, so don't underestimate this thing. And if you have 1 point left and can only spend it in the vehicle tab, consider using this. You have this little Tau 2 carrier, which is no need to use it. It's for 60 points, it's also quite an investment and dies quickly. I'd suggest not to use it. Other than that, nothing really noteworthy here except this. I've used this in the Eastern Bloc as fire support. As a comparison, they do deal the same suppression and they have the same rate of fire. It has less HE rounds because it has instead 60 extra rounds for AP. It has more range against ground units, but worse against planes and helicopters. But if you want fire support, consider that. I think that's all for vehicles. Helicopters, Sokol, your AA Hilo, KT obviously being broken. It has a ridiculously high rate of fire for the guns and a ridiculously low aim time. It is for some reason faster than other Mi-8s and also more nimble, even though it doesn't show. It's just broken. Planes. MiG-29 must have on Elite. It's ridiculously good and broken. If you want a second ASF for team games, probably F-18 or the MiG-29. Some people even in 1 vs 1s use both MiG-29s here as ASFs, both upvetted of course. If you want something purely for helicopter hunting, you have the MiG-21 BIS. Obviously the Syria is a must-have. If you want a seaplane, you have this. This is an okay rocket pod lane. This is more towards killing very light vehicles, even up to 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 armor. This reloads significantly faster and has much higher splash damage, of course, and stun. But is significantly worse at dealing with lightly armored vehicles. It's an okay bomber. You get 2 per cards, but obviously it's slow, has no ECM. It does fly very high, so against AA, especially non-radar AA, it is actually quite survivable. Obviously, it has 15 HP, but mainly because of how high it flies, against something like Strelas and stuff, manpads, it is quite survivable. Obviously, against Ace Fs and like proper AA, long range AA, you're gonna have a hard time. Very cheap, good bomber. It's fast, has some ECM, some missiles. It's obviously not gonna be like a very good helo killer or very survivable, but it's fast and very affordable. Especially in the early game, or if you dealt with your opponent's AA, you can seriously be really annoying and punishing with those little fuckers. This is bugged. I think this is still bugged, that after you drop the napalm bombs, it doesn't evac automatically. Not that it's a good plane. I guess it's an okay napalm plane. There are worse ones, but it's not really great either. Other than that, there's nothing really too noteworthy here left. Like I said, most polished things I probably went over Eastern Bloc overview anyways, and I went over pretty much all the finished planes. This is obviously a trash meme plane, but if you just want to disrespect your opponent or something, sure, you can use this. This is not very good either. Just if you want like a cheap Ace F, just take this, because then you also have a Helo Hunter. Just compare this to the Lazur, for example. It does have 30% ECM. It has the same R60s with only 1 second reload time, which is noticeable. It has worse secondary missiles. It has the AIM-9 with less accuracy. Let me just check the veterancy. Whoops. Let's see. You get base veterancy 2 on elite or 3 on hardened. Lazur, you get 3 on veteran. I think 3 on veteran is probably preferred, but at the same time, there's also obviously a much higher chance that you're not going to lose this anyways with 30% ECM, which is pretty good. And it also, does it have a better turn radius? No, okay, they all have 350. So I guess maybe specifically for the MiG-21 BIS, you maybe prefer the 2 on elite because you have higher survivability anyways. So yeah, it's a good choice if you want like Helo diver, especially since the MiG-29 doesn't have short range missiles. It's a pretty good choice, and I've seen a lot of people also take this. I've just not really seen this a lot in action because it's probably just not very needed, since you have very good anti-helo options with air decoys and the Ito 90. But yeah, that's Baltic Front. Very strong deck, very straightforward deck. It plays very similar to the old Eurocore, when Eurocore was like ridiculously strong with like 10-point Jäger, and was just very versatile in basically every regard. It's very similar to that, where back when the MXN was basically trash. Really reminds me of that, because it kind of does everything, and it kind of does everything well. And outside of like maybe the MiG-29 here, doesn't really have any like weird ass units. It's just very straightforward, very simple, but very strong. There's not much you can do wrong here. I mean, theoretically speaking, obviously you can do a lot of wrong by like taking all these shitty units and only taking like manpads, but that's obviously not what I'm talking about. Yeah, I hope you found it enjoyable, hope you learned something, and hopefully see you next time.